Hello all, it's Julia Lucas again, and I'm here in my lovely kitchen. Today I want to do something a little bit different with my deck review. It's more of a connect certain social justice issue to my decks. It's kind of what I want to do from now on when I'm not just reviewing like a new deck I got. Some of these decks I may have mentioned before or they're old. What I want to do is talk about some of the books I'm reading and about environmentalism and climate change. So the reason I'm doing this is because on Friday I had a little bit of a meltdown with Brian about how we can't get an environmental movement, a movement against climate change as we can against, on the same scale, against police brutality. I'm not saying we shouldn't have Black Lives Matter or a protest against police brutality. This is something that's been bothering me for years. I drove 15 hours to DC in I think 2017 to go to the climate march. No one really gave a shit. I've been talking about this off and on Facebook, and it got to a point Friday where I was just like, what can we do? Like, we can do two movements at once, which in fact I have something posted on my Instagram about that. You know, it's all related. It's also a racial justice issue. Why can't we get people involved? Like, you know, we had the Dakota pipeline, but I think that was more about taking Native American land than actually fighting against going to renewals, fighting against oil companies. I know people will say, oh, we care. I'm like, and I'll be like, but we don't. There's no environmental movement to speak of, in my opinion. And you know, Earth is burning. It is literally in places on fire. Like, you know, we had Australia, but frankly, I don't think people would have given a shit if koalas weren't dying. So I was pissy because I got a temper. I admit it. I got a fucking temper. And so I went on, you know, I did the cards, and this is going to be kind of, I'm going to talk about Alana Fairchild. I went on her little Instagram, and she did something about the cartouche card and how it's about your voice and your tone, and, you know, how you can use your words. And I decided I'm going to start posting these videos about books I'm reading, about my feelings, kind of what people were doing with Black Lives Matter. There are going to be people who are saying you are distracting from Black Lives Matter and police brutality, and my response would be, do you remember the police brutality from the Dakota Access Pipeline? The police are used to prevent environmental action. They're used they're used to benefit corporations. So, I look at the time. I have my phone in a weird way. I can't see the bottom screen. But they're used to benefit corporations, and right now our planet is run by these corporations, particularly the energy companies that, you know, are doing things that are completely destroying the planet. And on the one hand, a lot of people are like, oh, it's it's not people, these corporations, they have us trapped, and there's nothing we can do. But that's bullshit. If we actually got a movement together, we could possibly do something. Like, what if, you know, there was the protest where women were supposed to stay home. What if we just didn't drive? You know, well, actually, we already did that with COVID. Well, do it. Okay, let's scratch that, because what I was going to say, if we all just stopped driving and we all took the bus, or if we all did something, but we kind of already did the COVID. But I would like to mention COVID because we know what we have to do to decrease emissions, and it's drastically change our lifestyle. But I don't think people want to do that. I think part of the problem is that people like this easy lifestyle that fossil fuels give us. They like the easy lifestyle that our cell phones give us, which I'm using one right now, but I'll chuck it if the system changes. So it is true that we're stuck in a system, but we don't have to be. And I think people don't know as much about that system as they think they do. They don't know just the history of the fossil fuel. Like, they know that it's poisonous, but they don't know there isn't as much of an environmental education and awareness as there could be. And I don't really see people talking about it. I don't really see people talking about, read this book, read that, like do this. Even though they'll like talk about climate change, it's really not, you know, it's on the forefront, but it's not, unless you live in one of, and this all ties in with pollution, which I'll talk about, and the wave of plastic, which is all tied into fossil fuels. But anyways, this is a long rant about how I feel, and I decided to use my words and talk about some of the stuff, and I wanted to draw it to the decks because I feel like they could be like, there's a spirituality for me with nature, and the decks help strengthen that. But I also feel like for people who read oracle decks about earth and nature and use animal spirits, like, what are you actually doing for this nature? What, like, you know, what are we doing? How are we facing our own crimes against the environment? So I wanted to start with a deck that I just got about 3 weeks ago, and I love it. It's called Earth Warriors. It's by Alana Fairchild. It's an old deck. I think it's 2018, and I know there was some, like this is cultural appropriation because she does focus on indigenous people. The reason I don't think this is happening here, because to me, just a white person, the simple act of a white person writing about indigenous cultures isn't necessarily cultural appropriation. There are certain things that have to go on, and one of the things she does is her research. This is a well-researched book. So she represents them accurately, and she also puts it in the context of environmentalism and the indigenous people in the context about how the destruction of the planet is really hurting them and that they need protection. And I like that she also said they need protection from curiosity-based tourism from us. So that's a really important recognition. She also, I love her term, and we're all indigenous to Earth. And a lot of people might be like, oh, that's the same as we're all part of the consciousness, so we need to transcend race. But the reason I like that we're indigenous to Earth is because some people suggest going to the moon as part of the solution, aka Elon Musk. No one wants to go to the fucking moon. We didn't evolve to live on the moon. We evolved to live on Earth, and that is why I like the term we're indigenous to Earth. So this is a great deck. In case you're still worried that this is a white woman who made this deck and used indigenous culture, she does have one Norse card. Look for a deck, the Jade Oracles one, that is made by a native person, and get that also. So you can like have a balance of them. I actually did order the Jade Oracle. I'm waiting for it, and I'll review it. So then you people will know what I'm talking about. But, sorry, I wasn't looking at the camera for a while. But yeah, this is just a beautiful deck. I just love... Oh, there's the Norse one. You know, the art is fabulous. She gets all the meanings correct. And usually I don't like busy art, but, you know, this is art that... And there's a lot of birds in it, which is also probably why I like it. And... Zulu, I believe. You know, so it's abuela medicine. I love this. Healing remedy of our grandmothers. So this to me is a great deck. If you're interested in environmental activism, you want to meditate to something, this is a great deck. I love her message in it. So now for the books. If you're really interested, because she does talk about the destruction. So if you have this deck and it really speaks to you and you want to read further about environmental issues, I have two books that are good to start with. They're about the Exxon Mobil, or the Exxon, is it Exxon Mobil? Exxon Valdez, sorry. Exxon Mobil is good. But I seriously read these books and then forgot the name of the Exxon Valdez oil spill in Prince William Sound in Alaska. Out of the channel. And then this is my favorite one, Not One Drop. And it talks all about the oil companies. It goes into the history of the oil companies. And then it talks about how the communities, it's a white community, a mostly white community, and then an indigenous community. And they also work together, but they each had their own issues with it. And it talks about how it impacted that and how it impacted the wildlife and how Exxon, which became ExxonMobil, used everything, the courts to its advantage, how corporations manipulate the law, and how oil is hurting us. And it really talks about how corporations have run roughshod. And it's a good place to start because it's kind of, like, there were other oil spills, but it's kind of the beginning of awareness of how terrible these companies are. And that, you know, leads up to the Dakota Pipeline, but also to the BP oil spill, Deep Horizon. I don't have a book, but there's a movie. I think it's, oh, what's his name? I'm blanking on his name. Who's in The Departed? Wahlberg is in it. And 10:29, checking the time. And it's very, very good. These also go into the science. And if you're trying to study environmentalism, and especially this one, is because she's a scientist and a fisherwoman, it makes it very accessible. And this science, and this will help out, this like gives you a foundation for what's going on. I'm also suggesting, so the Audubon Society has a lot of great resources. And one of the things that in this, because I give to them in this particular issue, oh, that's the owls, hold on. A new plastic wave is coming to our shores. This sounds very optimistic. That was sarcasm. Apparently, I didn't know this. There's no market demand for more plastic by the people, but the plastic companies and the fossil fuel companies are partnering because there's a surplus of natural gas and they want to do something with it, so they're just going to make more plastic and just inundate us with more plastic. Because plastics are a huge source of fossil fuel, and according to this article, it's going to be the largest contributor of fossil fuel pretty soon. Plastic, it turns out, is a great way to boost profits from the nation's glut of natural gas. So I highly recommend, you do have to like donate to the Audubon, but this is a great magazine about environmental issues, and it's constantly talking about climate change because birds in particular are just being massacred by climate change. So anyway, so those are some books. Again, the deck that goes with the books, as I guess I would say, is Earth Warriors. I really like how she connects this to environmentalism. And, you know, it's her usual positive approach. And, you know, whether or not you like her, or whether or not you think it's cultural appropriatism, what she does is acknowledges the environmentalism and the destruction. And I don't know, maybe some of the other shamanistic decks do that, but they didn't really interest me. And it's just, like I said, the art is incredible. And you've probably seen this deck. It's old, but in case you haven't. So hopefully this was an appealing format and thing to do. It was my first time doing anything like this. But I'm not going to complain about how no one's passing around environmental books or whatever and then not do it myself, because I have a ton of them. There's Pachamama, which is a kind of a Mesoamerican goddess that's in a lot of decks, but she has a lot of, this is a Madagascar. Lolo is how you say butterfly or moth in Madagascar. She's got a lot of concepts that I'm not familiar with, and she ties it all together. I feel like she ties it all together as one without erasing the uniqueness of each culture. And the fact of the matter is indigenous people are going to be hit hardest. And in terms of conservation, what they found is the best way to conserve like forests is to have the indigenous people and their subsistence hunting gathering, although it's usually more a little complex than that, but to have those people on the land. And she recognizes that in this deck. But well, not that specifically, but how important Indigenous people are to the modern environment. So she puts them in the context of today instead of like keeping them as this old-fashioned thing. I'm out of time. See you later.